Most of us prep for what is going to happen after a disaster. We store water, food, guns, but all of our prepping supplies don't really mean anything if we don't survive the actual event. No matter how well prepared we are, what we do in the first 24 hours after a disaster should be our number one priority. After all, it doesn't really matter how much stuff we have stored away if we aren't able to get to it or if somebody else gets to take it. If you want to eat all that food, drink all that water, and stay alive, you need to take immediate action when disaster strikes. Naturally, what the first 24 hours will look like depends on what specific event sends society in a downward spiral. If it's unrest or some kind of uprising, then you might find things move slowly at first, with protest or tension building in certain areas. But as violence spreads and clashes intensify, the speed at which it all unravels increases. Alternatively, if the event is a chemical or nuclear attack, things will spiral very, very quickly. Regardless of the type of event, if it's truly going to cause the collapse of society, there will most likely be a point at which things turn suddenly. It is at that point that chaos will erupt and it will become difficult to determine what to do in that moment. That is why you need to think about this in advance. Have a plan of what basics you need to take care of in the first few minutes, the first hour, and then subsequent hours after a disaster strikes, regardless of what form that disaster takes. When things break down, even in the midst of chaos and panic, most people will still be expecting the government and authorities to swoop in and save the day. This simply isn't going to happen. There is a point at which even those in charge will give in and run to their families to be with them and protect them. And even if the government does decide to provide aid, if the disaster happens quickly and over a large geographical area, it will take them time to get to everyone, determine what people need, and set up a method of distribution. Do not wait like everyone else. If you do, you'll be sorry. Just watch this video and learn what happened during Hurricane Katrina.
Hurricane Katrina was an entirely expected storm. It was certainly a bad Category 5 hurricane, but it was nowhere near the worst. Plenty more powerful storms have hit the mainland US since 2005, yet none came even close to the degree of human tragedy that Katrina unleashed. The reason this one became perhaps the most remembered modern US hurricane, even 2 decades on, has little to do with the weather itself. Rather, it's because the truest disaster was the response. In the days immediately before and after the storm, a series of operational failures unfolded, and the consequence was dozens, hundreds, perhaps even more than 1,000 preventable deaths. The earliest stages went as they should have. The US's weather agencies tracked the storm from the earliest phases of its formation, and as it rapidly intensified and its severity became clear about 48 hours out from landfall, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, initiated Level 1 disaster operations at its headquarters, as did its 2 regional offices whose territory lay in the storm's path. From here on, all 3 offices would be staffed and working 24/7, while all 15 of the emergency support functions at their disposal would now be activated. FEMA staged nearly 550,000 liters of water, 700,000 pounds of ice, and 330,000 meals ready to eat at the camp, along with other supplies positioned elsewhere around the region. The day before landfall, the map of supplies and personnel deployed at the federal level looked like this, with an emergency response team member being appointed federal coordinating officer here in Baton Rouge, where federal response would coordinate with the state of Louisiana's Office of Emergency Preparedness. In the early hours of Monday, August 29th, Hurricane Katrina did what forecasters expected it to. It smashed into the Gulf Coast with 25-foot waves and 130-mile-per-hour winds. And while New Orleans dodged the brunt of the storm's direct impacts, the surge of water that followed became the critical problem. Unsubstantiated reports of levee issues began rolling in the morning. Then at 6 p.m., as the skies began to clear, a Coast Guard flyover with a FEMA official aboard verified as much. The fragile levees tasked with keeping water out along the low-lying north side of the city had failed, as engineers had feared they would. As the storm gave way, floodwater poured into the city, and the race was now on to get supplies and responders in and to get the stranded out. And immediately, a massive problem. The larger governments don't proactively push resources in, they technically wait for the smaller local governments to ask for them. FEMA, the National Guard under the purview of the Department of Defense, the state of Louisiana even, were thus all waiting to hear exactly what supplies Mayor Nagin and the city's command center needed and where. But with cell towers down, landlines flooded, and the internet cut off, the city couldn't get information out. 2 days after landfall, as the city went from under siege by a storm and back to miserably hot summer, FEMA had yet to establish stable communications between the local emergency officials and Baton Rouge, where state and federal resources waited for direction. While the lack of pre-positioned communication resources within the city would be criticized in the months and years to follow, for now this meant major chaos in getting needed resources in. As goods did begin to make their way into the city, they were the wrong goods or the wrong amount of the right goods. Truckloads of ice when food was needed, a truckload of ice when 10 truckloads were needed. In some parishes, the requests they swore they made just never showed up at all. All the while, as federal, state, and local emergency operators worked to scramble goods into the city, FEMA slowly began to mobilize to get people out. In the years prior, New Orleans officials had done significant amounts of planning on evacuating people from the city before the big one hit. But less thought had actually been given to getting people out after a major weather event. And this had disastrous consequences, a full week after the storm had hit. From here, search and rescue took center stage while the city, state, and nation began to wrap its head around how it would bounce back from the storm. A slow, poorly executed response made worse by racially charged rumors of violence and more acutely felt by the city's poor and blacker populations pushed many of these very people out. Whether it was the trauma associated with sheltering in a dangerous, disgusting, and dimly lit Superdome, or the PTSD stemming from close calls as the water poured in, or the prolonged suffering while waiting for rescue, Katrina and its response sent tens of thousands to spread across the American South and never come back.
So, what should you do during the first 24 hours after it all hits the fan? Chances are, if you're watching this video, then you're a prepper and you know the collapse has come most likely before anyone else realizes it. If you have been preparing for a long time, chances are you know what the signs are and you're going to see them while everyone else is just watching TV and wondering what's happened and what they should do next. This is your small window of opportunity to spring into action. Here are some steps you can take immediately after a disaster. The very first thing you must do when disaster strikes is to ensure you and your loved ones are out of immediate danger. Get somewhere safe immediately requires you to quickly assess your situation and determine if there's any immediate threat to you or your loved ones. This is probably going to happen within the first 60 seconds after disaster strikes. Once you are out of immediate danger and everyone's patched up, you need to get yourself home or to a predetermined location. Your initial assessment of the situation and your immediate surroundings will tell you whether that is feasible and how easy that is going to be. Get home by the quickest and safest route possible. You need to know what happened. And once you know that everyone is safe at your predetermined location, you can take the time to do a full assessment of your situation and gather the necessary intel to determine the full impact of the event. Whether it was a natural disaster, a pandemic, or full-on riots have popped up in your town or city, a nuclear attack, grid down, or any other event, what has happened will have a direct impact on your next steps. The specific event that occurred, the short-term and long-term impact of said event, whether you can hunker down at home or you should get out of Dodge. You will need to gather as much information as you can as quickly as you can in the first 24 hours after the event occurs. If the electricity is still functioning and you can access the news or internet, find out as much information as you can in that manner. If there is no electricity where you are and you have a solar or hand crank radio, see if you can pick up a signal with that. If you have set yourself up with a ham radio, even if you don't have a license to transmit, which to me is irrelevant in a real disaster, you still have the ability to listen in on conversations going on around you or to receive communication from someone in your prepper group. If you have to go outside to gather intel, you have to be prepared to stay safe. The fewest people possible should leave the safety of your home, but do not leave alone. You should be armed and dressed appropriately, such as wearing a minimum N95 mask for potential contagions, or a gas mask if there is a chemical or nuclear threat. Get the information you need as quickly as you can and get back to home base. Sometimes, if you're very lucky, there is a short period of time after an event happens during which most of the population is still in the what happened phase. This means full panic and chaos is not yet set in. And if you need to augment your preps at all, this is the ideal time to do it. Presumably, you have some cash on hand so you can pay for the items you're going to need if the ATMs and credit card machines are down. Get there, get what you need, and get back home as quickly as possible. Avoid people as much as you can during this process. When I say this, I mean act like everyone else. You have preps, you know your family is safe, but no one else needs to know that. If the people around you, those in your neighborhood, are out talking and wondering what happened, when the food and help is coming, where the shelters are being set up, and you aren't doing the same thing, someone is going to wonder why. Provided you feel it's safe enough, spend some time going out and asking questions and generally acting like everyone else to make it look like you're just as desperate and confused as they are. This will put them off of your prepper scent and give you the space needed to breathe and determine what to do next. Within the first 24 hours, you should be able to tell how bad the situation is and how quickly it's going to deteriorate. This will allow you to make more concrete long-term plans to get you and your loved ones to safety so you can survive the event that has broken society down to its knees. Just remember to keep your cool, keep your head clear and focused, and be as thorough as possible with your assessment of the situation. Then you and your family will have the best possible chance of survival. Now, if you made it all the way to the end, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe, and let me know what you thought in the comments. AP out.